And with that, we want to welcome you on in. It's back to work, folks. The NBA resumes play with 6 games following the trade deadline coming and going. We are Game Time. I'm Vince Giuliani, pleased to be alongside Stu Jackson and David Aldridge. A couple of guys were pretty busy all day long. But it turns out, after the Boogie Cousins deal that we saw back on Sunday, we didn't get another big blockbuster. And names like Paul George, Jimmy Butler, both mentioned as possibly moving, possibly to Boston. We'll start with Paul George. What do you think went into the fact that he remains now with the Pacers?
Well, look, I think the biggest thing is that 2017 first, that Boston controls the Brooklyn pick. That's been kind of the holy grail for Boston for several years now. And, you keep hearing conflicting stories about was the pick in play, was it not in play? I think at the end of the day, I don't believe it was in play, because if it was in play, I think they might have done the deal. So without that, there's really no incentive for Indiana to do the trade. Indiana's not going to trade their best player, their all-star player, for a 2020 first-round pick and a couple of bodies. They wanted a chance to pick in this draft when you have potentially some franchise-level players coming out. So once that didn't happen, or wasn't close to, didn't become the focal point of that deal, I just don't think there was enough there in terms of assets for Indiana to be engaged fully in making that deal. Doesn't mean it can't happen, can't be reconstructed at some point, maybe in the summer, but right now they said, we'll pass.
Yeah, and if you're Boston, you probably flirted with the idea of getting better right now, because you sense a little bit of vulnerability with Cleveland, the fact that Kevin Love is out. We don't know how he's going to be when he comes back, and perhaps they're a little bit vulnerable. But at the end of the day, I agree with DA. They've got this 2017 first-round pick, $30 million in cap room waiting for him in the summer to, entice another player, and that is really – in terms of sustaining their team and making it better, that's really where they're going to do it. Paul George, I'm sure to Danny Ainge, was a little bit of a short-term, Band-Aid, for lack of a better term, rather than looking long-term with the pick and free agent.
Yeah, David, during our coverage this afternoon, I heard you say that, Danny Ainge has to believe that making this kind of move is going to unseat the Cavs.
That's right.
And so you can't have that little shadow of doubt.
Any doubt, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. And to Stu's point, you have a chance to add 2. That's as opposed to 1. As great as Paul George is, if I can get somebody who's also an all-star level player, maybe not quite as good as Paul, but right there in the discussion, and potentially a transformational player with that pick. Look, everything that I've been told the last several weeks about Boston is that Danny really wants to be in this draft. He really wants a chance to draft one of these players, because they think that there's some special guys.
A lot of people do, yeah.
And so I get that. They feel like they can add one and sign one. I get it. Now, that's a long-term view, and maybe you give up a chance to be more competitive right now, but I'm sure Danny's looking at 3 years from now, 4 years from now, and what's the landscape going to be? Is LeBron still going to be LeBron? Is Cleveland still going to be Cleveland? Right. And who's there to kind of pick up the mantle?
It's interesting. Being in the front office, do we overrate sometimes relationships in front office with a Larry Bird and a Danny Ainge possibly talking through this? How do you read those situations, or can you, from case to case?
Well, listen, when it comes to making a deal, it doesn't matter if you're friends or not. You're going to tell each other really what you're thinking by what's on the table. And clearly, in Danny Ainge's standpoint, did he want to do the deal? Yeah, he did, but he sort of also did not. Right. Because if you're not giving up that 2017 pick, which Larry Bird's sitting there saying, I have to have, if you're never offering it, you're telling your buddy, Larry Bird, that I really don't want to do this deal, and I'm really looking for you to make a mistake.
All right. Well, we heard from Paul George now this afternoon. He's staying put, and Paul George has gone through kind of not so happy to, I got a team to lead here in the second half now. But this is Paul George in his own words. So let's listen to Paulie Golds and his reaction.
I kind of was on the ropes, just like you guys were, on what was about to happen. It's kind of a dark moment of uncertainty. And that was the frustrating part. Want me to be a guy here. Thought I would have been in the loop a little more on that.
I don't know, just interesting to hear that. And do guys generally shake it off after something like this happens, or they just look at it as a compliment that their name is out there? I mean, how do you think he's really looking at this?
I think he's told you. He just told you what he's
Well, no, I mean,
I don't think he's too happy about
yeah.
it. You know, it's easy to say, well, they didn't trade you, but you know, they were thinking about it. You know, now look, Paul is also, you know, I think he got a chance this week to say, I'm definitely signing that $200 million if they offer it to me, and he didn't exactly say that. So Paul has been a little ambiguous about his future as well. So I get it. You know, everybody's got feelings, and everybody wants to feel loved and wanted. That cuts both ways, though. You know, so they have to know what your intentions are going forward. And there's all these rumors that everybody thinks he's going to L.A. in 2 years when his contract's up. Well, they hear that too in Indiana. So they got internet in Indiana. They saw it too. So you know so that tempers, I think, some of this as well. But my guess is, look, I think that both sides would be well suited to ending this in the summer. Play the rest of the season out, see what happens and all that. But once the season ends, I think Paul probably could use a change of address one way or the other.